Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Genesis and our study of chapters 1 through 11. Today, we're tackling chapter 9. And so the last several weeks, we've been in act number 1 of book 3, the way that we're dividing Genesis up. And really, we've gone through the entire scene 1 of act 1. And now we're going to get into scene 2. Remember, scene 1 had the 10 frames. We've been going through those 10 frames throughout the flood story. Well, here we're going to get scene 2. And scene 2 is going to have 2 frames. It'll be frame 11 and frame 12 because all the frames are within act 1, if that makes sense. And so let's jump in to frame number 11, God's instructions to safeguard his plan of holding back judgment. This is the first 7 verses of chapter 9. Here we go. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And you, be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth, and multiply in it." If we continue on the line of thinking we've been on the last few weeks in finding similarities between this recreation story and the original one, then God blessing Noah and his sons in verse 1 should remind us of God blessing Adam and Eve in chapter 1, verse 28. In fact, that blessing and command is nearly identical to the one found here for Noah and his sons. They are to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Then God continues to reveal the dominance man should have over animals. The language is a bit stronger with that topic than it was in chapter 1, but the order is still the same. It's to be God above man. Man is to be above beast. And then after that, obviously, it would be the enemy at that point. But man is over beast because man is created in the image of God, unlike animal. And here in chapter 9, we find some additional instructions that weren't given in chapter 1. The first is to not eat blood. Blood represents life throughout the Old Testament, and this command shows the respect and value we should show animals in spite of being able to kill and eat them. This is right in the middle of hunting season, so this is great timing here. But that right is not to be abused, and they should not be killed, these animals in a savage way. We also see God call for retribution for the taking of a human life. Verse 6 says, "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man his blood shall be shed." This establishes a basis for the death penalty. I know that might be controversial for some people, but I do think it's important to know where the scriptural basis for that comes. And we are the ones who carry that judgment out. God uses mankind to enact his justice. This lays the foundation for government by the state, and this punishment, it's not personal, but rather it's for the benefit of society. The world had obviously gotten really dark before the flood, and man's heart is going to remain evil, so these measures God is putting into place is to have a better ordered society. The next part here in verse 8, we'll get into frame 12, and so it's God's covenant sign never again to destroy the earth, about the rainbow, right? 8 through 17. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you. As many as came out of the ark, it is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and that shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all the flesh that is on the earth. So the rainbow, right? We've all seen them. They're definitely unique and visually breathtaking. They're posted on social media stories everywhere whenever they can be found. And here we get their origin. I'm not really going to go verse by verse with this section because I want to have ample time to explain the type of covenant God is making with us in the earth here. See, in the ancient Near East, during this time, a common covenant type was the suzerain and vassal covenant. Suzerain and vassal represent the two sides of the agreement. The suzerain was the superior side, often a ruler or king, and then the vassal was the subordinate or lesser side. They would come to an agreement in which the suzerain would provide protection and the vassal would offer loyalty for that protection. It was typical with these covenants for there to be a sign of their agreement. And it was actually the responsibility of the vassal to keep up with that sign. And if the suzerain ever needed proof of their agreement, the vassal would have to present that proof or the covenant could be done away with. So this is a type of covenant for the original hearers of Genesis that they would have thought of. And so this is what we should have in mind when we think of God making this covenant with Noah and the rest of mankind and the earth. Obviously, God would be the suzerain and Noah the vassal. But what's really cool about God is he's going to shoulder the responsibility of presenting and keeping the sign of the covenant. The choice of a rainbow, which in the Hebrew language is simply just bow, a fighting instrument. And a bow, it points in a certain direction. So which direction does a rainbow point? Well, it points to the sky. It points to God. It's a constant reminder not only of the original promise God makes, but also that he is the one shouldering the responsibility to keep and maintain the covenant. It is completely upside down from how these covenants actually worked, just revealing even more so the goodness, love, and mercy of God. I know a lot of times God is portrayed as, mean and vengeful in the Old Testament, but there is actually quite a bit of support for his love and mercy too, and we see that here. We just need to be trained and taught to see it sometimes. And so what some of us might dismiss or, think of as a childish or maybe more feminine sign in the rainbow is actually very profound in revealing the character of God. His bow is in the clouds, and it points to him in his goodness and faithfulness towards us. This officially ends Act 1 of Book 3 of Genesis, all 12 frames of it. We now turn to Act 2 and a somewhat strange story of Noah in this vineyard getting drunk and being naked. It, sounds like a country song maybe. Should be fun. Here we go. Act number 2, prophecy about Noah's sons. Verse 18, the sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. Interesting note there. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." May God enlarge Japheth and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. All right, so things get a little weird here, and I'm sure there are many questions that this story could lead us to ask. The deliberate and seemingly out-of-place mention of Canaan at the very beginning seems strange. Why does Noah get so upset when it appears that Ham just saw him naked? Did it really warrant him cursing his grandson? Also, why does he curse Ham's son and not Ham himself? Also, the timing of everything seems so quick. Like it actually probably took several years to plant and cultivate a vineyard to the point of being able to make wine. So there are all sorts of questions. I think the main one that needs answering, though, comes from verse 22. What does it mean that Ham saw the nakedness of his father? If we take the text at face value and pretty much directly, then the best explanation is voyeurism. And if you don't know what that means, stop and Google it. But the idea is that Ham got pleasure from viewing Noah exposed and naked. Voyeurism in general violates another's dignity and robs that one of his or her distinctive desire or instinctive desire for privacy and for propriety. It's a form of domination. Ham's, however, is even worse. It's perverse for its homosexual voyeurism. And he dishonors his father on top of that, whom he should have revered, and then increases that dishonor by proclaiming it to others and his brothers. This would be the simplest and most direct explanation from the text. However, one problem with this view is if that's all that happened, how did Noah wake up and know immediately what Ham had done, that something was wrong? If Ham simply viewed Noah for his own pleasure, told his brothers, and then they covered Noah up graciously, Noah wouldn't have woken up and would have had reason to be upset. Now, perhaps Shem and Japheth told Noah after he woke up. I think that's a plausible explanation. And then he became upset after that. But the text just doesn't tell us that. It leaves out that detail. But entirely possible. There are some other theories about what happened that I'd like to explore. And I think it's important to do so. Like, it's important to discuss the Bible this way and ask questions and theorize possible explanations. To me, it shows we're interested in the Word. I don't see it as trying to add to God's Word, like some might say. No, I think curiosity is a good thing in these types of discussions. They even make the Bible more compelling. And there are three really other positions that I've seen. One is that Ham committed sodomy. Another is that he violated the marriage bed of Noah and his wife by sleeping with what would be his mom. And the third, and really the one that I'm going to add more detail to, is that Ham castrated Noah. Now, I know this is getting weird, and this is definitely reading into the text, but I do think it provides some compelling answers to the question this passage gives us. And this idea of castration comes from the Jewish Midrash. And the Midrash is a type of commentary from ancient Judaism where they'll add a story, often this far-fetched, like fantastical type story, to the Bible to answer tough questions that the Bible leaves us with. It's like coming up with this story to help us discover what the actual meaning is. And so in a way, by coming up with these stories, it's providing commentary to the meaning of the text. And so if they're right with this idea of castration, that makes a little bit more sense as to how Noah knew immediately when he woke up what had happened. Like, what the heck? Something is missing. Something is very wrong. Also, since his ability to produce children is now taken away, that could be why he curses the son of Ham instead of Ham himself. And really, in the curse, it's an act of vengeance. You know, Noah's like, you took my ability to produce another son away, so I'm going to curse yours. This story also has so many similarities to Adam and Eve in the garden. In the garden, they ate fruit, became naked, were covered up, and then God issues a curse. And here we have another type of garden. In a vineyard, we have fruit and the grapes. that produced the wine. We have nakedness again and the covering of that nakedness, and we also get a curse. And then also, if we look back to that Adam and Eve story in the garden, I mentioned this in that week's video about this river that was mentioned just kind of out of place, it almost seemed. But that river that flowed out of Eden and split into 4 rivers. Now, symbolically, a river could be like a tree depicting generations. We have a family tree, and in the same way, rivers, they split off into tributaries. And so that could be the same aspect of a family tree and dictating generations. And so where could that story parallel to Noah in this vineyard? Like, how do the rivers take part here? Well, he has 3 sons, and since there were 4 rivers, and also since God commands him after he gets off the ark to be fruitful and multiply, like we should expect a 4th son. That would be God's will for him even, you could say. And perhaps Ham takes that away from Noah. That could be why Noah got so upset. Like, one of the main differences from Adam and Eve to Noah, though, is that he takes the role of God by issuing the curse. He does not leave the judgment to God, but rather takes it into his own hands. And this curse has lasting effects too. The Egyptians, Babylonians, and Canaanites all descend from Ham and Canaan, all nations that Israel will have major conflict with in the future. What if the Israelites are actually in part to blame for that? That in a way it's a byproduct of Noah taking the place of God by cursing his grandson Canaan. Now, obviously, these nations are culpable too for the evil that they practiced and their corruption. But this view gives Noah and his righteous descendants some responsibility in it as well. Now, regardless of which position we take on what Ham seeing Noah's nakedness really means, we shouldn't lose the main implications of the result. The same way we saw the evil line of Cain continue before the flood and the good line of Seth that led us to Noah, this same fact is being repeated. Now we see the evil line of the Canaanites and the good lines produced by Shem and Japheth. So once again, we have the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman in conflict with each other, which is a major theme that's just going to continue throughout the Old Testament. But whatever means we get there by, and how we interpret the exact meaning of this text, it still leads to the same result. Noah's righteousness is reproduced in Shem and Japheth, his immorality in Ham. The pride of Ham against his father will be worked out in his descendants, and the modesty of Shem and Japheth in theirs. And that is Genesis chapter 9. Are you having fun yet? Okay, I know today was a little bit different. But let's try to reel it back in with some takeaways, and then we'll be done. So key takeaways. Number 1, God commissions humanity again. Just as God blessed Adam and Eve, he blesses Noah's family with the same mandate: be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Number 2, God establishes order and justice. We kind of breezed by that, but I do think it's a key takeaway. Okay, there are new instructions, including dietary laws, respect for life, not eating blood, and the foundation for civil government and capital punishment. We found that at the first part of chapter 9 here. Number 3, the rainbow reveals God's character. Unlike typical ancient covenants that we talked about, the suzerain vassal, where the lesser party bore responsibility for the sign, God takes responsibility himself, pointing the bow towards heaven as his reminder. Number 4, sin continues after the flood. Noah's righteousness doesn't mean perfection, and the conflict between godly and ungodly lines continues through his sons. And then lastly, number 5, taking God's place brings consequences. We saw Noah curse Canaan rather than leaving the judgment to God, and that has lasting generational effects. Well, that is Genesis chapter 9. We only have 2 chapters left. Next week is a full genealogy, and so I'm really going to use Next week is a big picture, almost review. What does all of Genesis 1 through 11 mean? And then we'll get the final story of the Tower of Babel in chapter 11. And so stay tuned, 2 weeks left. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time.